How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. In crypto, you never quite feel like you have enough. When the price starts moving up, you kick yourself because you have not bought enough Bitcoin. At least that's what you think in your head. However, you're probably doing better than most people. If you're watching this video and you have any crypto at all, you have any Bitcoin at all, you're probably doing pretty well. Today, I want to talk to you about the different levels of owning Bitcoin and how much you need to hit these different levels. And I also want to talk about why Bitcoin will probably move up. Of course, if you're watching this, you probably know some of those reasons, but I will walk you through it. If you don't mind, hit subscribe underneath the video, turn on that bell notification. There's no sponsor for today's video. So let's get right into it. If you like that, hit the like button. So let's look at the crypto market. Bitcoin's around 30,200. It hasn't been very volatile recently, but there are a couple reasons why it's going to go up. First of all, 98% of nations that have ever surpassed 130% debt to GDP ratio in the last 225 years eventually defaulted. Basically, they're not able to pay their debts. It's a terrible thing for the country, terrible thing for the people that live in it, and it can be pretty detrimental. USA hit 134% in 2020. Now, it has come down since then. We'll talk about that. But U.S. Treasury Department projects 700% before 2100. They say you call Bitcoin a gamble because you don't get it. I call bonds a gamble because they are. So basically, when we look at Fed treasuries, right, they have gone up a little bit recently. You get more money from your bank. You get 5% or something like that. However, the U.S. continues to print dollars. They continue to inflate. They need to pay down this debt. So there are a couple different ways to do that. You can have more GDP, which gives you more tax money, which means that you can go pay down debt, or you can deflate it away. As you can see here, the Fed debt has actually gone down a little bit over the last couple of years. It was up to 134%. Now it's down to 118%. So we are making a decent impact on that. We are bringing it down slightly, which is good, but we're also seeing CPI come down at the same time, which is interesting because that means, okay, if inflation is going away and the Fed needs to pay off debt, they need to raise GDP, they need to get in a good financial position, and CPI is coming down, that means that we are having high rates now, but most likely we will have to go back to lower rates if they want to really stimulate the economy, make sure that GDP continues to grow significantly without overheating, of course, but they will have to lower the rates to stimulate more GDP to then be able to pay off some of this debt. So it's obvious that countries will continue to print. The U.S. will continue to print, continue to provide stimulus, whether they say it's stimulus or it's some big new package to help incentivize people to go green with their cars or something like that. They'll continue to print money because that's the only way out for them. Now, with that in mind, at the same time, we're seeing large companies like BlackRock kind of see the writing on the wall. The U.S. dollar is continuously being printed, as we said. Of course, other countries are doing the same thing, so don't get me wrong on that. But at the same time, Bitcoin has a fixed supply. There's only so much that can be printed. It's a hard asset. Larry Fink, who's the CEO at BlackRock, a $10 trillion assets under management company, just said that it is digital gold. He said that it is an asset that's used across the whole world, and he thinks that the underlying technology is extremely valuable. So they are obviously jumping on the bandwagon. They're jumping on Bitcoin because they think that it's pretty bullish, which this is why I want to talk about the different levels of Bitcoin, right? You can see all this and you get this feeling that you don't have enough. Even now, after I've been buying for years and I put a lot of money into crypto, I still feel like I don't have enough. But how do you stack up compared to other people, right? How's your risk management? Now, I will say there are some assumptions here. I'm going to be talking about the different levels, but let's say you want to hit 0.1 Bitcoin and you're worth $1,000. Your net worth is $1,000. That wouldn't really make sense. 0.1 Bitcoin's $3,000 a Bitcoin. You'd be $2,000 in the hole. There are probably better things you can do with your money at that point. Now, maybe not. Maybe you just say, hey, I need this Bitcoin and I'll be paying a low interest rate on some student loans or something like that. I don't care. I'm just going to buy some Bitcoin. I get that. But you probably should be diversified. That's the first thing. You need diversification in your portfolio, because if you go all in on Bitcoin and then it falls 30%, well, where are you going to get money to dollar cost average into Bitcoin or buy some more? Or will you even be able to think straight, right? If your portfolio goes down and you worked hard for that money and then it goes down, are you just going to panic sell? So you need diversification. You need some cash on the sidelines too. I have some cash on the sidelines in case Bitcoin falls down or some other asset falls down. You should pay down bad debt, probably 25%. Well, obviously like those 25% credit cards, but anything above 10% is pretty obvious that you should pay it off. If it's below 6 or 7%, then there's a case to be made for maybe not paying it off. And then the other thing you have to do is, buying Bitcoin is great, but you have to store it somewhere safely. You have to get like cold storage or something like that. Now, if you have a couple $100, you can probably leave it on some exchange. It might not be worth buying $100 piece of hardware, but those are the things I want to say right up front. But let's go through the different levels. So number one, if you are trying to hit this kind of bare minimum amount of Bitcoin, you should at least have the average amount that someone on Earth can have, which we have 8 billion people. We have, let's say, 14 million Bitcoin. There are 19 million Bitcoin in circulation, or 19.5 million Bitcoin in circulation, but a lot of them have been lost. Satoshi hasn't sold or hasn't shown that he can sell his million Bitcoin either. There are some people that just won't ever sell. Big institutions are buying up like crazy. So there are a lot of people that think they're only going to be about 14 million Bitcoin, and that number actually gets smaller, like the total amount of Bitcoin, because people lose Bitcoin every year. So 14 million Bitcoin divided by 8 billion people, 0.00175 Bitcoin. It's a small amount. That is about $60, $58, something like that, of Bitcoin. I think that's very achievable for everyone watching this video. If you have a device where you can watch on YouTube, you probably can afford $58 worth of Bitcoin. The next level 2, is having 1% of your portfolio in Bitcoin. I couldn't find the exact study that I had seen a couple of years ago, but there are some people that think allocating 1% towards Bitcoin can generally increase your portfolio return a significant amount. Like in this portfolio example, a 60-40 portfolio, which is 60% stocks, 40% bonds, over the trailing 3 years, and this is as of just March, would give you a 10.3% return. 1% allocation to Bitcoin would give you an 11.3% return. The volatility is just 1/10% higher. So there is a little bit more volatility, but your annualized return goes up significantly compared to the volatility. So I think 1% allocation just gives you some peace of mind that, hey, I have enough Bitcoin that if stuff really hits the fan, I have some money. Right, let's say we have hyper Bitcoinization, which is basically where some people think that Bitcoin is going to go up to like $10 million, $100 million. They think that basically the US dollar is going to fall off a cliff and going to be worth nothing, and Bitcoin's price is going to go up. It's going to be an asset that you can move around the earth, and you have some Bitcoin. So a lot of people try to buy it. In that scenario, you would have enough to help you out to get by, right? If you had 1% of your portfolio in Bitcoin and you had, let's say, $100,000 net worth, you have $1,000. It's pretty good, right? It's more than most people will ever have. The next tranche, or the next step, would be to have more than the average millionaire has. Now, if we go by the same numbers, that 14 million, there are 14 million Bitcoin on exchanges, or that could be on exchanges if the price gets high enough. Basically, there's 14 million in circulation that people have access to, and there are 56 million millionaires, which is the last number that I've seen for the number of millionaires on Earth. That's 0.25 Bitcoin per person. Keep in mind that there are some people that already have a Bitcoin already that might not ever sell. So it might be lower, it might be a little bit higher, but having 0.25 Bitcoin, I think, is a great goal for most people. And of course, diversification, cash, all that kind of stuff. Make sure that you have that. Then the next level is probably having at least one Bitcoin. whole coiners and the new 1%. So having one full coin is kind of a huge milestone when it comes to owning Bitcoin because you're in the whole coiners club. There aren't that many people in it. Right now, there are about 1 million people that have one Bitcoin. That just happened recently. 1 million wallets, I should say, that have one Bitcoin, which means that it's actually probably a lot less than 1 million people that have a Bitcoin because a lot of people have multiple wallets, especially if you have, let's say you have 1,000 Bitcoin. A lot of people like to diversify into different wallets just in case something happens with their private keys or something happens just in general, right? You lose access for some reason or someone throws out something. It's better to have it diversified, or if your wallet gets hacked or something like that. So a lot of people might have 5 or 10 wallets, maybe just a couple wallets. So it might be closer to like 500,000 people have one full Bitcoin. So you would be in an elite club. 1 out of every 8,000 people, 1 out of every 10,000, 20,000 people are in this club now. So that is the next major milestone. Now the next stage is really interesting. It is being able to live off your portfolio if Bitcoin hits gold's market cap. With what Larry Fink just said a couple days ago, basically that Bitcoin is digital gold. A lot of people think that Bitcoin will hit gold's market cap one day. Now, it's somewhere around $600,000. Gold's market cap moves up all the time and moves down all the time. So does Bitcoin's. Somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000 at the time of this recording would be where Bitcoin has to go to get to gold's market cap. And I think it's possible one day. I think it's very probable one day that Bitcoin will get up there. Now, this is an interesting one. This level is basically that if Bitcoin hits gold's market cap, you can live off the 4% rule. Now, what's the 4% rule? Basically, if you take your portfolio, you can withdraw 4% a year and be able to live on that in perpetuity. Basically, your investment returns make up the difference. So if you spend, let's say, $40,000 and your portfolio is $1 million, the increase in value of that portfolio will kind of offset your $40,000 that you take out. Now, it's kind of weird because there's volatility that comes into play. There's investment returns that come into play. So it's not going to be perfect. But this is kind of another big milestone, I think, in my eyes. So what that looks like exactly, well, if you spend, let's say, $100,000 a year, you multiply that by 25 to get the 4% rule. Basically, you need a portfolio of 2.5 million. But we're assuming that Bitcoin is at $600,000. So that means that at today's market, or at today's prices, basically you need 4.166 Bitcoin, which would cost you $130,000, $125,000 worth of Bitcoin right now. 4.166 Bitcoin would be worth $2.5 million if it gets up to gold's market cap. Keep in mind that your expenses are probably going to go up because of inflation too. So there are a lot of factors at play here, but this is generally an interesting level in my mind as well. If you spend more, obviously you need more, and hopefully you have other assets too that would also increase in value. So you're not really just going to live off Bitcoin. I think you'd actually want to hold onto Bitcoin in that scenario and not sell Bitcoin most likely, but it is an interesting level. And then the next one is basically that you can live off the 4% rule right now with Bitcoin. So if you spent $100,000 each year right now, multiply that by 25, divide by 30,000, you need about 83 Bitcoin right now to live off the 4% rule. Pretty interesting. You'd have to sell about 4 a year. And then over time, obviously, Bitcoin would become more valuable. And then you would have probably a bigger portfolio overall. Because if Bitcoin goes up to 100,000 and then you have 83 Bitcoin, well, then you have $8.3 million worth of Bitcoin and you're still only spending $100,000 a year. So it is an interesting level in my mind. Not too many people are there. Not too many people are even at the level where they could, if it gets up to $600,000, where they could live off that. Most people aren't in the whole coiners club. Most people on earth don't have 1% of their portfolio, and most people don't even have the average of what someone could have. If you're watching this video though, you probably have more than this. You probably have more than 1% of your asset allocation towards Bitcoin, and maybe you have more than most millionaires. Let me know What do you think about this in the comment section? Don't tell me how much you have, because that's not a good thing. But let me know what you think about these different levels. Let me know if you're shooting for one of these, if it makes sense for you. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, stay safe out there. Bye.